Fisherman and Mermaid. Love Beyond the Waves. The story is brought to you by Hugglesby Stories. A Heart's Desire. In a village perched on the edge of a rocky shore, the wind carried the scent of salt and stories long forgotten. The fisherman there had long learned that the sea gave as much as it took. Aidan O'Rourke knew this truth well. With calloused hands and weathered skin, he lived a life of quiet solitude. Every morning, he pushed his battered boat into the waves, hoping for a catch that might ease his troubles. Yet day after day, the sea offered little, leaving him with aching muscles and an empty heart. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in fiery shades of red and orange, Aidan ventured farther from shore than ever before. His boat groaned against the rising waves, but something within urged him forward. It felt as though the sea itself was calling to him, a voice woven into the rhythm of the waves. Suddenly, his net was yanked so hard that his hands slipped. He gripped the rope tighter, his breath ragged as he fought to haul it in. The weight was immense, far too heavy for one man. But with one final heave, the net broke the surface, and inside lay a creature unlike any he had ever seen. Its scales shimmered in the fading light like 1,000 jewels, and its eyes, dark, deep, and knowing, locked onto his. "Release me," the creature said, its voice soft yet clear, like the whisper of the sea itself. Aidan's eyes widened in disbelief, his heart hammering in his chest. You speak?" His voice was hoarse, barely audible above the wind. He stared at the fish, glowing softly, as if from another world. "I am no mere fish," it replied, its eyes never leaving his. "I am bound to the magic of these waters. Release me, and I will grant you 3 wishes." Aidan blinked, half expecting the vision before him to vanish. But the fish remained, patient and unwavering. His mind raced, caught between disbelief and curiosity. What did he have to lose? His life on land had been nothing more than an endless cycle of toil and loneliness. He spoke, his voice steadying, "I wish for love, true love. A love that will fill the emptiness in my heart." The fish flicked its tail, sending ripples across the surface. "It is done," it said simply, before vanishing into the deep with a flash of light. A warmth spread through Aidan's body, so unfamiliar that for a moment he thought he had been struck by lightning. But as the sensation grew, the world around him began to change. The wind stilled, the waves grew silent, and before his eyes, the water parted as though a curtain had been drawn aside. Beneath the waves, an entire kingdom revealed itself, a world of shimmering coral and vast underwater forests. The Selkie's gaze. Creatures moved through the water like living art. Aidan gasped, realizing he could breathe, gliding through the sea as though he had been born to it. Then he saw her. At the edge of a glowing coral garden stood a woman, but not just a woman. Her hair floated around her like seaweed caught in a gentle current, and her eyes were the color of the ocean during a storm, dark and mysterious. Her silver tail glistened with the same magical light as the fish he had freed. She swam closer, her eyes fixed on him. "You must be Aidan," she said, her voice carrying the rhythm of the waves. "The fisherman who sought love." Aidan's heart faltered, his words lost for a moment. Who are you?" "I am Eibhlin," she replied, a faint smile on her lips. "A Selkie, and guardian of these waters. You wished for love, and the sea has brought you to me." For a moment, Aidan was silent, lost in the wonder of her presence. But then, reality hit him like the pull of the tides. "Love? I didn't know what to expect." Beneath the waves. "This feels unreal." Eibhlin's smile softened as she reached out, her fingers brushing his. "What is love, if not something magical? Something that defies the limits of our world?" From the moment Aidan's eyes met Eibhlin's, time seemed to slow. In the vastness of the ocean, where everything felt unfamiliar and otherworldly, she was the one thing that made sense. Her presence was magnetic, drawing him towards her in ways he couldn't explain. They communicated without words, through glances, the gentle brush of hands, and quiet spaces between their heartbeats. The first time they swam together, Eibhlin guided Aidan through the sunlit waters as if he had always belonged there. The transformation had left him weightless, his body cutting through the water with ease, his movements fluid and effortless. Each stroke felt like freedom, every breath, a marvel. The sunlight filtered down through the surface in golden beams, illuminating their path. Eibhlin glanced back, her smile teasing, and in that moment, Aidan felt truly alive. He had spent years tethered to the routines of his village, living in the shadow of repetition. "Come," she called, her voice drifting to him like the current. "There's so much more to see." With a playful flick of her tail, Eibhlin darted forward, weaving gracefully through the swaying tendrils of seaweed. Aidan followed, struggling to keep up as they danced through coral reefs and rocky caverns. Schools of fish parted before them like colorful ribbons, darting away in bursts of speed. He marveled at the creatures that moved alongside them, octopuses with shimmering tentacles, graceful rays gliding through the depths, and ancient turtles swimming slowly and deliberately. The wonders of the sea. They swam for hours, exploring the wonders of Eibhlin's world. She led him through grottos bathed in the soft glow of bioluminescent plants, their light pulsing like stars beneath the sea. The water was so clear that Aidan could see for miles, the horizon endless, the seabed teeming with life. Eibhlin pointed out each marvel with a quiet reverence, showing him the delicate dance of seahorses clinging to coral, the intricate patterns of the reefs, and the way the ocean seemed to breathe in time with the tides. "Here, everything is connected," she explained one evening as they floated above a forest of kelp, the long strands reaching up towards the surface. The moonlight from above cast an ethereal glow, turning the water into a shimmering mirror. "The sea and its creatures depend on one another. It's a balance I protect." Aidan listened, captivated not only by her words but by the passion she held for this world. It was in these quiet moments, when the ocean stilled, that Aidan felt the deepest connection to her. It wasn't the wonders of the sea that captured his heart, it was the way Eibhlin spoke of it, the love she had for her world, the quiet strength she exuded as its guardian. But it wasn't all beauty and wonder. Aidan soon learned that even in this paradise, there were shadows. One day, as they ventured near a deep trench, the waters grew darker, the creatures more elusive. Eibhlin's expression changed, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the depths. "This is where the balance is most fragile," she said quietly. "The deeper we go, the more dangerous it becomes." Sensing the tension in her voice, Aidan reached out and grasped her hand. Her fingers were cool, but the touch grounded him. "Then let's stay where it's safe," he said gently. Eibhlin's expression softened. "There's no need to fear," she reassured him, though he noticed how her grip tightened on his hand. They turned back, retreating from the trench, but the brief glimpse of the darker side of the ocean lingered in Aidan's mind. Even in this magical world, there were dangers. The echo of the sea. Over the next few weeks, Aidan and Eibhlin's bond deepened in ways Aidan had never imagined. They spent hours exploring hidden corners of the ocean, marveling at ancient shipwrecks and swimming through tunnels carved by the sea over millennia. But it was in their quieter moments, when they simply drifted together, hands intertwined, that Aidan felt most at peace. One evening, after a day spent exploring a labyrinth of underwater caves, they settled on a large outcrop of rock, watching bioluminescent creatures drift by. The water was still and clear, and though they couldn't see the sky above, the darkness felt peaceful, like a blanket covering the world. "I've never known peace like this," Aidan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned to look at Eibhlin, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the sea creatures around them. "You've given me something I didn't know I needed." Eibhlin smiled softly, her fingers brushing his cheek. "And you've brought a part of your world here," she replied, her voice gentle. "Harmony in the deep. You speak of sunsets and laughter, things I've never experienced." You remind me that there is more than just the sea. There was a pause, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Aidan's heart raced as he leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat. I feel like I've always been searching for you, he whispered, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Eibhlin's eyes softened, and she leaned in, her lips brushing his. The kiss was soft, like the caress of the tide, but it carried with it the weight of everything they had shared, the wonder, the magic, the connection that defied explanation. In that moment, Aidan felt as though the world had faded away, leaving only the two of them, suspended between land and sea. When they finally pulled apart, Eibhlin rested her head against his chest, her hand tracing idle patterns on his arm. "This is where I feel most at peace," she murmured. "With you." Yet beneath it all, Aidan could feel the pull of the surface world. His time with Eibhlin was magical, but he couldn't shake the growing urgency in his heart. He had wished for love, and he had found it, but what would happen when the magic ran out? Each time he felt the pull, Eibhlin seemed to sense it. She would take his hand, guiding him to new places, as if trying to anchor him in their shared world. But Aidan knew that sooner or later, he would have to face the choice that loomed over them both. For now, though, he let himself drift in the beauty of it all, holding on to Eibhlin as tightly as he could, hoping that the magic would never end. Torn by the tides. As the days turned into weeks, Aidan's unease grew. One evening, as they floated beneath the glow of jellyfish, he finally voiced the question that had been weighing on him. "What happens when my wishes are gone?" His voice trembled, betraying the fear that lurked within him. "Will I lose you? Will I go back to the life I had before?" Eibhlin's expression grew serious. "Love is not bound by magic, Aidan. But you belong to two worlds now, one on land and one in the sea. You must decide where your heart truly lies. You cannot live in both forever." Her words hung between them like a heavy weight. Aidan had found love, but it came with a price, a choice that threatened to tear him apart. He had wished for love, but now he realized the cost of keeping it. I need time," he whispered. "I need to think." Eibhlin nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "The sea will wait for you, Aidan. But time on land does not move as it does here." As she spoke, Eibhlin felt the weight of her own words settle deep in her chest, like a heavy stone sinking into the depths. Her face remained calm, her voice steady, but inside, her heart churned with emotions she had long kept buried. Watching Aidan prepare to leave, Eibhlin felt a sharp pang of longing. She had lived for centuries, watching the tides take and return. It was a cycle she had long accepted as the natural order of things. But this was different. She had never allowed herself to love, never let the fragile thread of human connection tangle with her immortal heart. And yet, here was Aidan, and she had let him in, filling spaces within her that she had long forgotten existed. She wanted to speak, to call out to him, to tell him not to go. She wanted to tell him she feared the empty days that stretched before her without his voice echoing through the currents. She feared the stillness of the sea without him. But she could not. She would not. Eibhlin had always known that love came with the risk of loss, and she had resolved long ago to accept it with grace. But grace was harder to summon when it was her own heart at stake. Her tail flicked idly beneath her, betraying none of the turmoil in her chest. Her eyes, though soft with understanding, concealed the storm of feelings that raged inside. She had learned long ago to wear her serenity like a shield. To show vulnerability was to open herself to the pain she had carefully avoided for centuries. She watched Aidan as he stood at the water's edge, his face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. It is not the end of the story. Watch the only other episode of the story. If you enjoyed the story, share the story with your friends. See you again in the last episode of the story of Fisherman and Mermaid.